Have you been to patreon.com/WissescastProductions? Don't worry. Time is relative. We can wait. But can you? You shouldn't. That's bonus episodes, early access, and exclusive content just for you. And it'll be there for weeks, days, even years. But you shouldn't wait, because you never know when it all ends. That's patreon.com/WissescastProductions. Enjoy the show.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. He's told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children use it. Let the children use it.
We're back in space again. For you, it'll be like we've never been. For us, time has not been as kind. But if we're to beat this fucking virus, we need to social distance to the extreme. I'm AJ Wesses Cooper, and this is the After Credits Cast, the only film podcast to social distance from all humanity on the other side of the singularity. And I'm joined, of course, by my co-host Ryan Murphdors.
Hello, how are you?
6 feet.
6 feet, yep, sorry, my bad.
Um,
Maintain a radius of 6 feet inside the black hole at all times.
So I'm trying to think back how many space episodes we've done this in 2020. I know we did this. We did Gravity. Was there something in the anime season or the video game season? I can't remember. I guess the one anime where the time travel with the ribbon and the shooting star, that was kind of spacey a little bit.
That was kind of spacey.
Yeah. I mean, we did space a couple times this year. That's all I'm saying. You know, most people, they only do it once and then they're dead. So for us, we're there regularly. It's driving me crazy.
We're really good at it.
Yeah, we have a punch card. Go here 10 times, we get our 11th visit free. And of course, you can follow us on our misadventures here in the stars by going to the links down below. Patreon, YouTube, Pippa, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio. You know the rest. You know the drill. Google us and you'll find us if we're not in your favorite place. Let us know, and we will also reach out to trying to get there. Ryan, today's intro was done by David Bowie again. This time we did Starman.
Because, of course.
I like it when I can make these more ironic and fun than related to the movie, if I'm being honest. He's waiting in the sky. Just for y'all, right there. So yeah, we've got some movie today, Ryan. Are you ready for today's movie?
I am. This is one that I've been excited to get to. Yep.
We're almost done with the Nolan Wars, but Ryan, we still have to slog through 2014's nearly 3-hour piece is Interstellar. Written by the Super Nolan brothers, this film earned a total of $677 million worldwide, which is about 4 times what it cost.
Yep.
Not as good as Dark Knight, of course, but, you know, we can't all be Dark Knight. The cast includes Ellen Burstyn, Bill Irwin, Wes Bentley, John Lithgow, Mackenzie Foy, Matt Damon, Topher Grace, again playing a role I didn't expect to see him in until I saw him, Casey Affleck, David Gyasi, Jessica Chastain, Michael Caine, again, Anne Hathaway, and our starman, Michael McConaughey, who is...
Matthew McConaughey?
What did I say?
Michael.
I think I looked up at Michael Caine and then I read McConaughey. I'm dumb. But you know what, Ryan? It's all right. We got some awards here. We got 44 wins, including Oscar for Best Visuals, BAFTA for Best Visuals, Saturn Awards for Best Sci-Fi Film, Best Production Design, Best Special Effects, Best Performance by a Younger Actor, and Best Writing and Best Music. AFI's Movie of the Year, and of course 2 Empire Awards for the Best Film and Best Director.
Every single one of them well deserved.
I don't know. I mean, really? Best writing? I don't know. I feel like this movie could have written itself. Speaking of best things, Ryan, I think you have some fun facts for me.
Indeed, I have nothing but the best facts for you guys. First of which, early in pre-production, Dr. Kip Thorne laid down 2 guidelines to strictly follow. Nothing would violate established physical laws, and that all the wild speculations would spring from science and not from the creative mind of a screenwriter. Now, writer, producer, and director Christopher Nolan accepted these terms as long as they didn't get in the way of making the movie. That did not prevent clashes, though. At one point, Thorne spent 2 weeks talking Nolan out of an idea about traveling faster than light. See, I like that that Nolan went out of his way to get somebody to kind of fact check him on the science stuff because he wanted to stick very close to it. So that's really cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, you hate to do this, then you end up having characters traveling at ludicrous speed.
God.
He's got
gotta
plaid.
We've got to get that on the Mel Brooks season 2.
Dude, I'm so down for that. That'll be great.
God. All right. Next up on our fun facts, like in the previous works, Nolan focused on as many real environments as possible. We have spatial interiors, we built closed sets, and shot it like a documentary. Like the actors were actually there, he said. Nolan had the visual effects created in advance and projected onto screens placed outside of the spacecraft set. So when the actors and actresses looked out of their windows of the vessel, they could actually see and react to a real environment and not a green screen. Technically, Nolan said he shot with an IMAX camera on this movie more than any of his other previous movies. He also wanted to give a greater enhancement to the audio experience this time around. He stated that he had very ambitious sound mix plans. I want to give audiences an incredible immersive experience. The technical aspects are going to be more important than any film I've made before. I think he really knocked that out of the park.
I mean, he got one thing right at least.
A compliment. All right, that's good. That's good. I'm gonna pull them out of you.
Pull me out like I'm getting pulled out of hypersleep.
Well, speaking of hypersleep, my final fun fact, the hypersleep chambers place the astronauts' bodies in a cold liquid as seen after they wake up, when they are covered in blankets or thermal blankets or something like that. This is likely a practical reference to studies that have shown a state of hibernation can be achieved in the human body by causing hypothermia. Now, the technology has been used to treat brain damage and has been proposed as a viable means of keeping people with severe injuries alive after accidents while they are transported to medical facilities where they can be treated by specialists. Kind of like deep freezing your body.
Yeah, a good old corpsicle.
Yep.
Let's get some initial thoughts out of the way here. Ryan, up to now, this felt like the least Nolan film he'd made up until maybe the third act. And then given its incredibly methodical pace, it feels like it takes far too long to get where Nolan's talents really just pop and shine for me.
Interesting. Okay. I feel the opposite, although this definitely is a slower paced movie than his usual taste. I think you got the methodical part right, in which case he really gives the attention to detail, except he puts the major emphasis on the character relationships in the first couple of acts, so that because they become so important when combined with the scientific stuff in the third act. So all of it is done by design. I think it comes off flawlessly.
Well, I wouldn't say flawlessly, but we'll get there. Ryan, I've got a fun fact. Not fun fact. I got a synopsis here for you.
All right, let's go.
Here we go. Cooper is an engineer farmer man who is called to go to space when various space oddities occur in his home, spooking his daughter Morph. Morph isn't happy that Cooper is leaving her, but he says, "This one's for you, Morph," and jets off into space with some scientists in hopes of saving the world from the greatest dust storm since we've cleaned off the shelves at the stores after quarantine. After a significant time investment, the team enters a wormhole of sorts and arrives on the other side with 3 planets of varying prospects to visit. They opt for the closest one to conserve fuel, but due to timey-wimey bullshit, the planet experiences time at 1 minute per 7 Earth years.
It's actually 1 hour per 7 Earth years.
Oh, is it 1 hour? Okay, that was more just me making an error on that one. Obviously, things go to shit and they spend way more time there than they desired. 23 years, in fact. That's a lot of hours, guys. Like 3 1/4, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The return trip. They return to the ship down one crew member with new plans to visit one Matt Damon, who is still sending data from his planet. When they arrive, things seem a little off. We come to find out he's been sending false data in hopes of a rescue team showing up. He tries to leave Cooper and friends stranded, which results in the death of another crew member. Their ship also takes significant damage, and they are left with little options on completing their mission. A mission which Morph finds out on Earth over the course of these 23 years is almost guaranteed for failure based on the notes of Michael Caine. Once he dies, she kind of has a mental breakdown upon learning just how fruitless this mission was. But then things get wubba lubba weird, dog. First, Cooper devises a plan to get Anne Hathaway to the third and final planet in hopes of accomplishing something on this fucking mission. This plan involves dumping both the super robot and himself into the singularity so she can escape the gravitational pull with minimal use of fuel, if I remember right. Once there, he experiences the full effect of time in the fifth dimension, or some shit like that. He sees his daughter's room at various points in time all at once. He realizes at the same time as his daughter, again in the current 23 years later timeline, that the various clues left behind in the dust and on the shelves were him. He was the one who told him to stay. He was the one who reached out to Morph all these years in this weird time dimension. When the message is passed on, the Time Lords or whatever blow up the dimension and send Cooper back home. He awakens in a bed, humanity having been saved by Morph's revelations. He sees her as an old woman, far older than him. She gives him information that Anne Hathaway is still lost in space because, she needs rescuing or some shit. It's up to Lone Star to ride off and save her, or whatever. End of movie.
Or whatever. Alright, sure.
I mean, they kind of leave it off, making you think, oh, there could be more. But there isn't.
There doesn't need to be.
I mean, you say this, but, you could have a sequel. We could do Interstellar 2, Electric Boogaloo. They go together and they camp out, and they're like, hey, we got to start a new society here on this planet. And what? I don't know.
No. So far, Nolan has been great about not biting onto the fucking the Hollywood trap that is fucking sequels. Not everything needs a sequel.
What about Dark Knight Rises?
That's different. Fuck you. Fuck you. That's different. All right. We are excluding the Nolan Batman trilogy because it was a piece of art and is entirely separate from everything else.
I mean, I'll agree with you for 2 of the 3 of those. I'm not even trying to be facetious. I really don't like the Dark Knight Rises. It's got problems for me.
Man, we'll save those problems for when we do Batman.
We will. They're not nearly as egregious as this film, of course.
Well, I can hear the fight bell dinging, so let's get to the discussion, shall we?
Absolutely. First question I've got, Ryan. Is this film too long? And does it spend too much time showcasing the accuracy of its science and technology?
I don't think so. Like I mentioned earlier in the initial thoughts, it's definitely methodical in its approach, but it does that because each of these building blocks are really important to the core thesis of the film, which being that there are forces beyond our ability to observe that can traverse through things like time, like gravity, and even love and human emotion and feeling. So it makes sense that the bulk of the first half of the movie is so focused on the intense familial love that Cooper has towards his family, because it's that love that ultimately saves the planet. I don't think it's
not his son. He's kind of an afterthought.
His son's kind of an asshole, but I mean that's neither here nor there. His son's a farmer. It's fine. Don't worry about it. He's a caretaker.
I mean, let's not go around dissing farmers, everybody, because I mean, you may think they're a bunch of bumpkins, but they're important. They're important. So there's a lot of coastal people out there I know who are very much like, oh, Midwest is dumb. All the farmers are dumb. It's like, come on, guys, now be respectful. Be respectful.
Yeah, no, disclaimer, we are not dissing the importance of farmers. Without them, we would have no food.
Indeed. I argue, Ryan, this film's too long. I will say, yeah, it does need moments to showcase the family bonds and all that stuff. But I do feel like there are definitely spots and things you could trim down. At 2 hours and 45 minutes, something along those lines. I think it might have been 250. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's 248 or something like that.
Yeah. it's a long film. It's a big investment, and a lot of it is spent on these longer, slower shots establishing the scientific technology, the machines, the world, the physics, and while there is some interesting spectacle to be had, I do think it pulls away from the story, the crux of the whole thing. Why are we here? We're here to see Cooper and these people save the galaxy, or at the very least, figure out the answers to these problems, these complex problems. And I feel like the lack of focus on that, and focusing more on just, hey, this is a black hole. Look how accurate we are with this. I don't know. I feel like there's just a bit of there's a bit of wiggle room that could have been shortened up a little bit.
I agree I agree that the movie possibly could have been tightened up, but the time that it spends on those long shots, I don't think it's to really like flaunt the accuracy of whatever scientific fact they're using to base the movie on. I think it's just to really immerse you in the first movie that Christopher Nolan's done about space exploration. Like the whole Cooper's whole premise, at the beginning of it, is that humanity has forgotten that we're explorers. We belong on the frontier trying to find the new shit. And when they get out into space, they spend that time luxuriating in just the alienness of it. Like, being able to see this massive black hole and seeing how light warps around it was fucking insane. Anytime they spent on an alien planet, you got to see so much of just what makes that planet so different from Earth. Fucking ice mountains, like frozen clouds in the sky that look like mountains. Fucking mountain tall waves of water. That's nuts. I wanted to spend more time there, but I do agree that it could have been tightened up. I just really didn't want it to.
I'm going to move on because we have a lot of questions here for this one, I think. The events of this film take place over the course of 23 to 50 years Earth time due to time shenanigans. We are told that the Earth is dying and they need to evacuate, but it seems like that the end of the world isn't really an urgent issue, as it is taking 25 to 50 years to get anywhere. So I guess my question is, what are the actual stakes of this film exactly?
Well, I think that actually gets towards what ends up being like a major twist towards the end of it, which is that when the mission is originally pitched to Cooper, they're saying, okay, we have a plan A and we have a plan B. Plan A is that you guys get the information and with enough time and get back to us, so that by the time you get back here, we can move all of humanity off of the planet to whichever safe planet that you guys found. That's plan A. Plan B is that the people on the planet are fucked, but we've got a whole bunch of sperm in petri dishes, and we're going to jumpstart humanity with all of these petri dishes, and that's how we're going to do it. But the big twist is that plan A was never expected to succeed. So while Cooper is trying to really strive to get this done as fast as possible, you'll notice every time that the relativity happens, he hates it because he's trying to get back in a decade, not several decades, because he needs to get back to his family as soon as possible. So the stakes are really Cooper's kind of the only person, along with Brand, because she wasn't aware of the bullshit, the lies. But his focus was really on saving the people on the planet, but other people's and the people that initially made the mission, their focus was saving the species. And both of those are pretty big goals, I'd say.
Well, and I think this comes up as a criticism on my end, where, yeah, that twist does reshape what the stakes kind of are. And it also reinforces the stakes in terms of Cooper. But like I said, though, this whole world is dying. Everyone's in a panic, and these scientists are sent up to quote unquote save the day. But when you realize all that's going on, what's actually happening, you're thinking, okay, so the stakes on Earth don't really matter when you get to the grand scheme of Michael Caine's plan. I forget his name, but Michael Caine's plan. It just ignores the more immediate problems. Which brings me to another question I have on here, which I pulled from a site, a discussion forum that I thought was interesting, which is where'd it go? Okay, here we go. Why choose to pour billions of dollars into a secret, unprovable an unprovable science project from NASA that's all secret instead of towards a cure for the world's blight problem / food scarcity problem?
I think as in the long run, they recognized that the blight was unstoppable, that they could only slow it down. But that was that the premise of the movie is that the Earth is slowly becoming uninhabitable for humans, and despite the efforts of their best scientists, they can't stop that from happening.
Okay. I don't think that in particular was made 100% clear. I
don't think so either. I think they kind of asked you to take that on faith, pretty much. Like they didn't like. I mean, like Michael Caine's character actually talks about that for a bit, and he says, well, the majority of Earth's atmosphere is nitrogen, and we don't even breathe nitrogen, but the blight breathes out nitrogen, and the more that the blight goes on, the more nitrogen is produced. So the last people to starve will be the first people to suffocate, because eventually they won't even be able to breathe on the planet. So it's like we can't stop that. So they put all the money towards NASA.
Okay. Let's see, what else I got here? Why are people being told the Apollo moon landing is fake? And what does it seem to be saying about the modern day beliefs regarding space travel?
God, that pissed me off.
It really did.
Man, that was like, are you fucking kidding me? You mean you don't believe we went to the moon?
I will say though, when I first heard that, I'm like sitting here like laughing, like, yep, this seems pretty accurate to what people believe today.
So I mean, like, it's funny that she called like the Apollo moon landing a great piece of propaganda when the whole covering up of our space exploration is in essence propaganda to try and keep people focused on more food farming techniques rather than staring up and looking off into the stars. So I think that was super hypocritical, and it really made me not like that teacher as well. But I think in general, that's what they were trying to go for. They were trying to get people more interested in farming and like the needs of society today, as opposed of like these pipe dreams that they think won't do humanity any good.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I got nothing to add to that one. What is Dr. Man's role in the story, and what does he kind of represent?
God, this is the opposite of Matt Damon in The Martian. I loved him in The Martian. I hated him in this one.
Dude, Martian's one of my favorites. It's so good.
Martian is such a good movie. And like both of these are great movies in my opinion. I'm not dissing Matt Damon's performance in any way, but he plays kind of the polar opposite of himself in these two movies, and that's really fascinating to me. To get back to your question, Brand, or like Cooper and the female Brand, they have a conversation before they go to their first bit of sleep, where he asks if she thinks that nature is evil, and she says no. She thinks it's formidable and like scary even, but it's never evil. It's never like it's not filled with malice or anything like that. So he said, I guess the only evil we'll see is what we bring with us. And that is what Dr. Mann represents to me, because the only things that were done purely from like malevolence were his actions. And it was truly because he wanted to survive, but he was willing to screw over pretty much the last chance of humanity in order to get somebody to come pick him up because his planet was dead. So while we kind of look at when we look at the perseverance of the human spirit and like that survival instinct, we see mothers picking up cars and like fighting off grizzly bears to save their children, or like all of these amazing things. But there's also kind of a bad side to that, because people will also do horrible things to survive as well, and that's what Dr. Mann represents.
feel like it may not be necessarily that he's evil, but I think he's fearful. I think he's afraid that his life's work will be reduced to nothing, or that it won't mean anything because he's stuck on a world that has nothing for him, or anyone else for that matter. And I think he sees this one escape as his only way out of there, and he has grown into this very untrusting, non-social person, and his goal is just to vacate as soon as possible and try to, rebuild and reestablish what he's out there to do.
Well, so I would disagree with the idea that it's all about his work, because I think at the end of and I don't think he's unsocial as well. I think it's specifically because he needed to be around people again, because he couldn't fathom spending the rest of his life as literally the only person on a dead planet. It's why he was willing to pretty much scuttle their whole mission. So when I mention evil, I don't mean that he's doing it simply to be spiteful or just to be like an asshole and like want to like actually go around and kill people, but he is willing to throw away or severely damage the hopes of his species in order to be rescued from this planet. And he spends a lot of time trying to talk his way in circles so that he's trying to talk the bad stuff that he's doing into something good, whereas like, I'm going to take over this mission and we're going to save the human race and da 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 da, when really it's just he couldn't fathom the idea that his planet was not the one they were going to pick, and so he needed to get out.
Okay.
So I definitely agree it was stemming from cowardice, though. I do believe you're right on that.
How does the connection between Cooper and Murph, both positive and negative aspects, drive the story forward?
Do you mean their connections to each other, or the similar traits between the two?
You could read it every way you want. I think either one of those could be acceptable.
Well, I think I do think both of those come into play because it's only because of how strongly they felt to each other and the bond between them that was able to really transcend time, so that he was able to give her the data that she needed in order to perfect the equation. But I also love that in the midst of these hopeless odds, Coop and Murph are two of the people that really don't ever see giving up on the Earth as an option. In fact, I would argue that the biggest betrayal in the movie comes from the Michael Caine's character pretty much planting the doubt in Murph's mind that her father just left and abandoned the planet, because that is in no way what actually happened. And had he not been dying, he probably would have told her that. But for a good long while, she spent the first bit of the third act, she spends it like, did my father just leave me to die? Did he really just abandon me? But in truth, both of them were trying to save the people on the planet, like the hardest out of everybody.
Okay, I could see that, yeah. And I guess we could probably jump into this question here at the bottom, or near the bottom. Was the build-up to Murph's ghost, the reveal of Murph's ghost, effective, and why or why not?
Okay, so this is my one gripe with the movie. It's not even really a gripe.
Everybody, I win.
It's not even really a gripe. It's just so the reveal being that the ghost was actually Coop after he flew into the singularity and got caught in essentially a tesseract made explicitly for this one thing. It's definitely interesting, and it definitely speaks towards like the idea that the wormhole and the tesseract at the heart of the singularity was really created by humanity in the future that's kind of working backwards to secure its survival. Because when humanity reaches the point where they are masters of time and space, they can do that to make sure that they actually survive long enough to do that. It kind of hit me by surprise, and that's why. But I do think it was done well, and I do think the building blocks to that led up to it were very well done, because the first message that you get in the movie, the first message that Coop gives when he's in there is trying to tell himself to stay, trying to tell himself not to go. And that it comes at such an emotional point in the movie because he's going to be gone for a while and his daughter just really doesn't want him to go. And she's like, look, even the ghost doesn't want you to go. In Morse code, it says stay. Fucking stay here. But he can't change the past. He can't change the past, so it has to happen that way. All in all, I think it was well done. It just took me by surprise, that's all.
And what's interesting to think about, too, is if he had listened to the ghost, everyone would have been doomed anyway, so...
Yes. I mean, the movies about time travel are very interesting and very fun to think about like this, but everything in this movie had to happen exactly the way it did in order for the timeline to be successful. If he had chosen to stay with Murph, everything would have fallen apart. Had they decided to listen to Dr. Brand and go to Edmondson first, humanity would have been doomed, straight up.
I mean, everything needed to happen the way it did, like you said, but did Romley really need to die?
Unfortunately, yes. I was so sad. I didn't want him to die at all.
Yeah.
He was just... I felt so bad for him, honestly.
I mean, he was just doing his job, and he was, dedicated to that shit. Which brings me to my question here, Ryan. How does Romley's role dramatize the plot and increase the stakes, and what does his death represent?
Well, I think, especially him being left out for the first mission, it really drives home the reality of the singularity and of time slippage, because the change from him at the beginning and then him 23 years later with those patches of gray, and you could see kind of slight bits of dementia because he had been by himself for 23 years. I think that really just makes it... I think he's meant to ground us, honestly, because all of the crazy shit really happens to either Brand or Cooper, and Romley's just kind of along for the ride. He does his job, and he's analyzing data from the gravity well. He's doing everything that he can, but the story's kind of happening around him, so he's kind of our touchstone, really.
Okay. I'll skip that one because I don't think it's a big deal anymore. If it's been 50 years since Murph figured out the messages from Ghost Coop, why is Anne Hathaway still only just setting up camp on that third planet while everyone is down to clown on the space station?
Well, I think towards the end, the timey-wiminess kind of loses the plot a little bit, because I'm not entirely sure when Brand gets to Edmonds. It's the furthest planet away, so keep in mind it is the furthest planet away, and the maneuver that they do to slingshot around the black hole costs them 51 years. So it could just be that when he's setting off for the next space adventure, they're just reminding us that, hey, Brand is on this planet. She's setting up the stuff. She's possibly going down for the long sleep right now. But it also kind of confirms that the Edmonds planet is actually what they're going to be using as home, once they settle it. Like, that is the right planet. So they just have to get there. But I'm not sure exactly when she lands, because timey-wimey Cagliostro bullshit.
And just think, if they had gotten it right the first goddamn time, they could have saved themselves a lot of time and not had 2 people die on them.
But then the people on the planet would be dead.
I mean, would they though?
Yeah, because in order for humanity, actually, if they had just gone straight there, humanity never masters time and space. Because in order for Murph to get the data from the black hole, someone has to go into it. If they just
no, not someone. It has to be Coop. If it had been like Brand or somebody else, it wouldn't have made any goddamn sense.
You're absolutely right. It has to be Coop. So if they had gotten out of the wormhole and then said, all right, we're going straight to Edmund's planet, that's it. They find it. It works. Maybe they come back, but they don't get the second half of the equation. They never master the gravitation. They never master gravity. So they never actually develop the technology to get humanity off of Earth. And it's just going to be Brand and her test tube babies on Edmund's planet.
Okay. I got 2 more questions, Ryan.
All right.
Blast for those last one's pretty quick, but like I said, there's a lot on this one. It's a long movie, a lot of content. Why do the majority of movies in the sci-fi genre seem intent on showcasing just how horrible space travel could be or likely is? Why does it never attempt to show space travel in a more positive light, in hopes of generating more interest in the field or to younger audiences?
Well, I think that especially for movies like these, especially because we had Christopher Nolan consulting with like a renowned scientist that like really wanted the movie to be as realistic as possible, to kind of put kid gloves on it would be to lose what the essence of space exploration is, because it's amazing. Like, literally anything can be out there, but it's also amazingly deadly. And if you're gonna get people interested in becoming the next generation of space explorers, they gotta be aware of the risk. You got to be. Like, you can't treat that with kid gloves. So I appreciate
I'm not saying
that.
Ignore the risks, but I'm more saying like, for example, there was record numbers of people churning out for archaeology based professions after the release of Jurassic Park. And now, granted, it didn't show dinosaurs to pause like, because they're murderous monsters in that movie, but it did make the idea of being an archaeologist, paleontologist, I don't know what I'm thinking of. It makes the idea of being a paleontologist seem like this weird, rustic, cowboy-like thing, because it made someone like Sam Neill seem interesting and cool. It made the entire prospect of it seem like an interesting idea. But really, all you're doing is just digging around the dirt and looking at bones and seeing if they all go together. When you break it down, that's more or less what you're doing there, at its barest level. So I guess what I'm saying is, why is it that the sci-fi genre doesn't seem as interested? And I'm not saying this movie in particular, but just in general. Ignoring your obvious fantasy movies like Guardians of the Galaxy and whatnot, but like the ones that are attempting to be more realistic. So many of them seem just intent on just showing how much of a pain in the ass it is to be in space, how horrible the whole experience likely will be, and none of them, I'm not saying kid gloves, but maybe more just focusing on like why it's worth doing, what the positive sides of everything are, what you can hope to get out of it, versus just, oh hey, if you do this, you might die.
Well, I mean, I think, especially like the movies that we've done like this in Gravity, like, yes, there's an emphasis on the dangers of it, but there's also an emphasis on the sheer beauty of space exploration. Like, traveling and seeing the black hole, like, it's as scientifically accurate as a depiction that they could come up with, and that's amazing. That's stunning. The possibility of going to this world where there's a lot of water, but it actually comes in waves as high as a mountain. That's incredible. It's terrifying, but it's also incredible. Like, that life could have evolved in this way on this planet with these conditions to make this. Or flying in a world where the clouds are actually just solid and frozen in the sky, and you can see like Mount Everest just floating upside down in the clouds. I don't think they need to play up the benefits of space exploration because they're pretty evident. Like the dangers are there, but it's also beautiful, and you could see things that no living being has seen in that galaxy before.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I also am awed by some of the sci-fi genres, like more beautiful aesthetics. But I get in so many conversations with people in regards to space travel and why it's important, and so many people don't seem to think there's any value to it. And it just kind of befuddles me. Even if you ignore the more, like, fantastical elements, like, just think, eventually, someday, this planet is not going to sustain our life. Whether it's global warming, an eventual ice age, or something else entirely, this planet will not be sustainable forever. Which is why I'm always, like, a little confused as to why no one wants to actually invest money into, like, proper space programs. Like, I know you have SpaceX as a private thing, and I know Trump's got this Space Force thing.
With Steve Carell.
With Steve Carell, yes. But for me, it just is interesting that there are some people who just don't see a value to it. And I think they may see stuff like these films where they try to be realistic and show these dangers, and they're like, well, why bother going up there in space and getting killed when we can just stay down here and make this planet better?
Well, I think this actually kind of goes back to what Dr. Mann was talking about in the movie, where he said the reason that they lied about Plan A is because humanity has yet to outgrow that empathetic limit where we can care deeply and strongly for the people in our lives, but that empathy generally falls short when it's outside of our line of sight. Like, people would probably, like, the same people that you're talking about that don't think that space exploration is worth it are more than likely worried about the problems that are plaguing us here and now in our society and on our planet, rather than looking towards the stars and what our species might be capable of in the next couple of centuries. They're like, I'm trying to get through today, so why are we spending money on something that might be useful in 80 years from now? I do think there's some merit in dealing with problems that plague us right now, but it's also very short-sighted if we only do that. So I think there's a middle ground to be made there.
Okay. Final question, this might be the hardest one.
Ooh.
When Nolan makes films, there's usually a deeper metatextual read to pull. But for the longest time in this film, I just didn't feel quite like it was a typical Nolan film. Is there an underlying meta read of this film? And if so, what is it? And why does this film feel so different from his usual work? I even tried looking up some meta reads. I couldn't find anything super solid, so I didn't know if there was anything you saw that maybe I missed.
Well, so what I took from it is that there really is that the future of mankind will be achieved through a meeting of scientific thought and that inexplicable bond between us as a people. Because it's only using technology that we can't fathom yet, like in Masters of Space and Time, to reunite a father with his daughter. And it's the combination of those two things that saves humanity. So I think it's different than any Nolan film that we've done, that he's done, because I would say this is like the purest science fiction that he's undertaken. And I think the meaning of it is a little more straightforward than usual, which is why I think you're kind of looking for a metatextual kind of understanding, and it's really a little more surface level than that, or at least for me, it is. But I do think it is looking towards that middle ground where humanity really shines at its brightest, when it is empathy and love for our fellow man that is backed by a mastery of science that only our species that we know of has been able to achieve thus far. You can't go all in one side, because then you forget about science and you just start looking at the dirt, and you're just caring about your kids as they're struggling to breathe on a planet that doesn't want them anymore. If you go on the other side too fully, you just write off everybody that's alive right now, and you're focused solely on putting more of the species in some other place, and you lose what makes you human. It's only by getting the best of both worlds that humanity is going to thrive and flourish.
Okay. I can dig that. Yeah, like I said, it's definitely one of his. It definitely doesn't feel like the Nolan films we've seen those so far. So many of them, like we said, have this deeper reading to them that we've been able to suss out pretty good. This one definitely doesn't shoot for that same basket, but I think it's not trying to either. So
right, I think this one, like this and Dunkirk, are his two most recent films, and I think for these two films, he's really trying to stretch a bit. I feel like he's leaving the stuff that he's kind of known for and that he's used to putting out, and he's really trying to stretch the limits of his artistic vision as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, the types of things he wants to tackle. I think he's really trying to kind of stretch his box out in these two movies, which is why I think it doesn't feel like a typical Nolan film, but I also think it's still really, really good. It's just different.
That's all I have for questions, Ryan. Is there anything you wanted to add to the conversation?
I think we hit all of the stuff that I really wanted to talk about.
Like I said, there's a lot here. There's a lot that goes on. I honestly thought, and this is just me thinking pseudo-negative, pseudo-positive, I think this could have also worked better as like maybe a mini-series, like divided up into 2 or 3 parts, and make it maybe a bit more digestible that way.
Yeah, but I also this is one of those movies where I didn't mind the length because I was so engrossed with what was happening. I understand not everybody is like that, and a 3-hour movie is an ask. It's a big ask for some people. I definitely understand. But I personally think that the movie was so engrossing that I just forgot about it. And I was just more into what's happening next or what's going on with the story. Like like Cooper sitting down to watch 23 years of his family's messages after the first planet alone is worth the price of admission for the ticket. Like, honestly. Like, and the movie just has a bunch of moments like that. It has a bunch of those emotional, like, power points where it's just... you just have to sit there and feel it.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at, too. It feels like there's just so much stuff. Like, it's... Not only is the movie long, but it's very dense, too, so there's a lot of content to sift through. And I feel like giving it more breathing room would help, and the only feasible way to really do that is to split it up and maybe pad some things out to give that breathing room a bit of space. But that's just my thinking. Again, I'm someone who also is interested to see the take on what's the movie Hateful Eight, where they've broken up into like multiple chapters essentially.
Right. Well, on the other side of that question, then, and I know you mentioned earlier when we were talking about the length that you think the film could be trimmed down. What would you trim out of the movie to bring the runtime down?
That's a hard one, especially since I've only seen it once. I have to go back and see what parts not necessarily lost me, but definitely felt like they weren't focusing on what we're there for. Man, that's an excellent question, and I wish I could give a more solid answer, but it's one of those things like I have to sit through and watch it again and just kind of see where... Because the first time I'm going through it, I'm trying to focus and pay attention to the story, the plot, all that stuff. I'm not thinking about, I'd cut this, I'd cut that. But now that I've seen it once, I'm like, okay, what do I need to get the main point from the end of the movie? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely get that. I think it goes back towards what I think was the thesis of the film, because I think if you cut out the long shots of them exploring space, of like them just like taking in like what the fuck this planet is, or just like looking at these gorgeous like beautiful long shots, or the tents driving through cornfields to try and distract people with the fire or something like that. I think if you just go for the bare bones of the story, it kind of loses its heart, because I think the film is actually about space exploration to a large degree. And so losing those moments where you just kind of take in the sights and you're just like, wow, I think it would lose the point, or it would the main thesis would lose some impact after all that.
Maybe. So that's all we have for questions. Ryan, if we have people who want to email us their thoughts on this film, or any other films, where could they email us at?
They can email us to Dr. Man is a piece of shit at excuse me, sorry. Had some garbage stuck in my throat. That is evacstation@gmail.com.
What kind of name is Dr. Man? It's almost implying that a woman can't be a doctor. Oh.
We have one of those in this movie. Get out of here. And before you talk to me about some sexist nonsense, I will remind you that Brand's initial intuition to go to Edmund's planet was correct, because that is the planet that they will call home in the future.
Her intuition was correct, but the reasoning she gave was flimsy.
It's also the same reasoning that Cooper gave to take the flight, though. It was damn near like word for word, because when he was having the conversation with his father-in-law, saying, just because there's a part of me that feels like this is the mission I was born for, doesn't mean that it's wrong to go. And she says pretty much the exact same thing, where she says, just because the thought of seeing Edmonds excites me, even though I know he's likely dead, it doesn't mean that it's the wrong decision.
But I mean, we know it's the wrong decision, because if they do that, then he can't go into the singularity and do the time travel shit and allow the humans to survive. So.
Yeah, well, timey-wimey bullshit aside, because there's no way that she could perceive, there's no way she could guess that the hyperdimensional beings that are helping them are actually humanity from like eons in the future. There's no way she can know that. So her initial thought is, that's the planet where humanity is going to thrive. We should go get that. And that was right.
Man, we could be on this debate for hours, and there's really no reason to, because
I know.
You can also follow us on social media, Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook. You could also go to patreon.com to support our show, patreon.com/WhatSaysCast Productions, and you get exclusive content and all that stuff. We talked about top of the hour. We're bringing it up here again near the end of the hour. And with that being the end of the hour, we're going to move on to our final segment, which is reviewing the film from platinum to trash, all the colors in between, where we discuss our true thoughts on whether or not we like this film, and give it a proper, permanent ranking, unless it's a movie we come to hate later on. You know who you are. Ryan, what do you think of this movie?
I'm sorry, just one more thing on the Brand did nothing wrong. She actually saves Cooper's life when Man tries to kill him. She's the one that actually flies out and saves him. So I don't want to hear any bullshit about people saying that all of the female characters in the movie, like in Nolan's movies, don't like only create problems. Not only did Brand save Cooper's life, but humanity as a species is saved by Cooper's daughter.
Listen. He had to learn to get away from that bad habit eventually. It's about damn time.
Wow. Anyway, I'm sorry. We're on the final bits here.
Yep.
I love this movie. I absolutely love this movie. It is it's a beautiful ode to space exploration. It does an amazing job of combining the hard science with the empathy that humanity is amazingly capable of. I do believe it's probably not for everyone. It is a beautiful film, but 3 hours is a bit of an ask for some people, and some people aren't really interested in space like that. So I'm going to give this a gold because I don't think it's required viewing for everybody to watch. But if this is your jam, then this will be one of your top movies because it what it sets out to do, I think it does amazingly well.
I would say this is definitely a movie I'd recommend. I would say it definitely has some breathtaking visuals. The acting is pretty solid across the board. The writing is solid as well. I would say I do have some legitimate gripes with it though. I do think that it is a time investment for sure, and not everyone is willing or able to do that. I get that. I would say the sci-fi, the actual science of it, is solid and grounded. But I'm also of that mindset of I like a little bit more fantasticness to it and a little bit more unrealness to it, especially when you get to some of this really like heady stuff that you really can't, verify for sure, like what it actually is like on the other side of a black hole or in a singularity and stuff like that. Like I get it, they're taking some creative what do you call it?
License.
Yeah, some creative license there, but I am always of that mindset of like, hey, if you don't really have a solid answer for how things work, just fucking come up with the most fun, fantastic way you can do it. And I get that's not how Nolan jives, which is why I think he is better suited to smaller scale stories. I don't think this is his worst film, but I do think he's better suited to smaller scale, more down to earth films for sure.
You don't think a never-ending tesseract built around a library that you can access at any point in time was fantastical enough?
It was
that was out there.
It was out there to a point where I'm like, I don't understand what exactly the purpose of this scene is. Again, it goes back to my metatextual, my looky-loo here, where I'm trying to figure out like what it means, but I'm not really finding the meaning behind the scene other than just connecting the tissues from the beginning to the end of the film, making it basically loop. And while that's cool and everything, to me it feels a little bit lacking in meaning. Like you said, it's very surface level, and I like my films to be a bit deeper than that, especially from Nolan, who has proven multiple times to be able to be very capable of that.
So Interstellar is not deep enough for you. That's interesting.
Not deep enough in the way that Nolan typically does. To be clear, I think
you like him to deal with a little more like subconscious.
Yeah.
I understand.
More psychological, more subconscious. This is more deep in the terms of science and space. And while that's really cool, I definitely feel like it's not Nolan's best. It's not Nolan's playing field. But he definitely gives it a very solid attempt. I actually did some reading and found out that Steven Spielberg was originally penned to direct this film before they switched to Nolan.
Really?
I would have been very curious to see his spin on this one. I guarantee you it would have been perfect Spielberg fodder for sure. Well, no, because he's really good at fantastical, like sci-fi nonsense. He's really good at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I like Nolan for the interpersonal drama more. Like I think we would have seen a very, very cool science fiction film out of Spielberg, but you wouldn't have had me weeping when Cooper was watching 23 years of footage from his family.
I mean, you say this, but he has made works that have made people cry before, so I wouldn't count him out.
I'm not taking anything away from Spielberg. I just think in that realm, I think Nolan does it better.
That's one of those.
That's a debate.
That's a debate. That's one of those branching timelines that we unfortunately will never see the results of.
Yeah.
I will give this a very strong, very solid, high up silver. I think it's still really good. It just falls a little short of what I would have liked to see from it.
That's fair. That's fair.
So yeah, definitely still positive. Not as positive as Ryan, but still positive. Next week, Ryan, we are venturing back to Earth, back to the ground floor, back to the battlefields of World War II, because that's a place we can go to. Dunkirk next week. I was hoping for a reaction there, but I guess I'll just move on. We'll see you after the credits.
Bye.